how you can rewire your anxious brain and feel more calm, more relaxed, and deal with difficult situations easier. Well, first of all, you can do that. You can change your brain, and this is because of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is a neuroscientific term, and it basically states that your brain always adapts and changes. It's just like your physical muscles that you're having, because your brain also works according to the principle use it or lose it. So for example, if you just train your legs will become bigger, but not your upper body probably. And that's the same with your brain. You know, if you are, for example, are anxious every day, all the time, you're training your anxious brain parts. And what's actually happening, for example, your limbic system that's in the middle of your brain, that's where your emotional part is. And there's also, for example, so part of this limbic system is the amygdala, which is one part, which is a lot responsible for fear. It's a bit more complex, but I'm just simplifying it right now. And if you're afraid and have a lot of anxiety over months and years, even days already, what is happening is that this amygdala is actually getting bigger and more dense. There are more neurons. There's a better connection between your neurons, and it simply works better. And you train yourself to be more easily also anxious. If you're anxious right now, what is happening actually is that even the blood in your brain is streaming towards that amygdala and that limbic system, this emotional area, because you use that area right now more, so more blood streams in there, because in the blood is also all the oxygen, and this area needs more oxygen right now because you use it more, right? So even more blood is streaming there. And your prefrontal cortex, which is right behind your forehead where you think rationally, in this moment even has less blood. That's why when you're already very anxious, it's hard to inhibit yourself cognitively. Tell yourself, hey, I'm fine, this is not a difficult situation, calm down. This is not even possible because the connection right here between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system is not as strong because you didn't train it. And on top of that, the blood is mainly in the emotional part right now, the limbic system, and not your prefrontal cortex, where you can inhibit and control yourself. And if you do this over days and months and train that and have a lot of those situations, well, over time there is much more blood in the middle of the brain. And the blood has all the nutrition, and that's why the middle of the brain, where the limbic system is growing more and it's becoming more dense, there are more neurons and everything. And the other parts, which are more responsible for relaxing or for controlling you, which you don't train, they actually decrease in their function. So neuroplasticity kicks in, and you're getting better at feeling anxious over time. And we want to rewire that. By the way, funny study, they did a study with taxi drivers before they came taxi drivers and also afterwards. And they also did a study generally with taxi drivers who already do the job for 10 years or so. And there's a brain part that is called the hippocampus. That is responsible for a lot of things, also storing memory and everything, even your emotions to a degree, but also it's responsible for your geographical orientation. And taxi drivers are very good at that. They drive around all day through the city. They need to geographically orient themselves. And they noticed that taxi drivers actually have a larger hippocampus because they train that part more. They rewired their brain in a sense. And so can you, simply when it comes down to your anxiety. And that's what we want to talk about today. First of all, I want you to give you a little bit better understanding of anxiety, because probably you have a very negative connotation to that. You suffer from that. Maybe you have general anxiety, maybe specific anxiety, maybe you have panic attacks in particular situations where you feel like they are not necessary, or you exactly know what you're afraid of, and you want to change that, and you hate that. You don't like being anxious. And I get it. It's quite a hustle these days. But I want you to at least understand, on top of your current perspective, that actually anxiety by its nature has actually a positive purpose. The purpose of anxiety is to warn you, to pump up your blood, to pump up your heart rate, so you're ready to protect yourself. Anxiety is here in some way to protect you. And optimally, if everything is going right, the right stimuli are triggering your anxiety. And if you notice, oh, there's stress, this is important, I need to deal with this, then you feel more anxious, and then you actually work faster, you do the job better. The problem with anxiety, this emotion by itself, is that what is often happening is that you start to overgeneralize. So the things in the past that made you stressed and anxious is something that you often cannot distinguish properly anymore because you became so anxious over time and you're so afraid that your mind thinks, hey, let's rather be anxious a bit too much instead of a bit too few. Because if I'm once not anxious, but I should, I could be dead. Looking at it from an evolutionary perspective, like thousands of years ago, if you once not actually alert, not getting it, maybe somebody will kill you. And that's why anxiety is an emotion that likes to more generalize. And with generalization, I mean, you go through life, something happens, an email pops up, or something starts to be a little bit stressful, and you immediately become very anxious and overgeneralize the threats, basically the threats nowadays, which are emails, unhappy clients, unhappy business partners, or you generally see a downwards trend in the business, for example, or when you're still in school, maybe great, or there's anxiety has a lot to do also with a social aspect with other people. Other people are looking at you differently, and you're afraid and overthinking what others might think about you. This is also a lot to do with anxiety. And you overgeneralize that. Maybe you even have general anxiety and you just constantly feel anxious. And that's not healthy. And your brain is totally wired in the way you don't want it. Yeah. And one part of rewiring your brain is to distinguish the threat better and to differentiate what is now dangerous and what not. Do I need to go crazy about this or not? Can I stay calm or not? And that's something that I want you to teach in a sense today. Also, what is probably happening is you have a very strong connection between your thoughts, your mind, your thoughts, your emotions, and your physical body. So at this point, you're already so annoyed by this anxiety that when you notice that your heart rate is pumping higher or you're sweating a lot, anxiety kicks in again, you notice that, so your thoughts kick in, and then you notice, I'm also emotionally a bit more stressed, and then you think about that, and then you think, oh damn, I have anxiety again. I don't want anxiety, especially not in this situation. And then thinking about and noticing this makes the emotions even worse, makes your body pump even higher, and then you get even more panic because there's like panic going on. So basically you're having anxiety of anxiety. So if you feel anxiety, you feel even more anxiety because you're anxious about being anxious. And that's making it even worse. And that's also what we want to work on. So let's actually slowly hop onto the solutions and the things you can do to rewire your brain. And the first aspect is actually exactly that you become aware of this triangle. Your emotions, your thoughts, your body, how it reacts differently, and become aware of that as early as possible. Because when you're right already into your anxious thoughts, and maybe you're just simply catastrophizing, maybe you cannot sleep, maybe you're having a panic attack, whatever it be, if this is already about you're right in the thick of it, it's hard to let go of this. It's like a kitchen fire. If the kitchen is already fully on fire, it's hard to extinguish it. If it's just like a slow and small fire, you can easily extinguish it. And you want to notice your anxiety as early as possible when it's still this little fire. So you want to notice when the heart rate is just going a little bit up. You want to notice when you're getting a little bit anxious emotionally. You want to notice when you start catastrophizing again, very early on. Because right now, when you're anxious, you maybe understand it afterwards, maybe even while you're getting anxious or right after. And I want you to become aware of it right before. And not even right before, at some point, maybe even far before, maybe even a couple of minutes before. So you can already take the actions to relax and calm down and not get anxious. That's one of the big tricks. Awareness. If you name it, you tame it. If you become aware of it, you can tame it already much, much better. Because if you're already in the thick of it, there's only so much you can do. So the key is to notice that. And that's now a little bit abstract, but if we would, for example, work together one-on-one, we would really go into and think, what are the triggers? What is triggering all that? In which situations? Is it more in the morning, more in the afternoon? Is it more in the evening? What kind of thoughts you're having about what is stressing you? Is it just work? Is it your private life? Is it a lot of social interactions? What are you afraid of? What would be the worst case? We would all take this apart, and you can do this on your own as well to become more aware of that. And then in the second step, studies are very clear about that. By the way, anxiety is something that is very treatable, and studies are very clear about what helps the most with anxiety. And it is to face it. It's the exposure therapy. And exposure therapy means that you are actually taking a closer look and you look into the eyes of your fear. So maybe you don't procrastinate, but you do the difficult work. You have a difficult conversation with somebody you need to work with. And you, for example, go out and go to the gym, talk to that person you need to talk to. Or set your boundaries straight. It could be all things you need to do. And you want to start very easy, and then you step up the game slowly. Because what is often happening with anxiety makes you withdraw. Like, oh, this stresses me. Let me not do that. Let me not give a keynote speech. Let me not go to this meeting. And first of all, short term, you feel some relief of like, oh, great, I didn't face the anxiety. I didn't face the threat. I'm not anxious. Great. But that makes your comfort zone smaller and smaller, and you become more and more anxious of the actual thing. Because when you haven't done this in 2 years, it becomes bigger and bigger. And fear by its nature, if you don't look at it, it becomes bigger and bigger than it actually is. And if you take a closer look, it's actually much more doable. And that means when you face it, a so-called corrective experience is happening. Because in your brain, it's like worst case 10x, and then you face it and you notice, oh, it's not as bad as I thought. Then you're correcting your experience about that threat and you calm down more. So basically, you want to turn anxiety into courage, deliberate courage. So anxiety is about withdrawing, courage is about actually going out there and changing something. That's what you want to do. And again, you want to start slow, and you also want to adapt the growth mindset, which simply means there will be setbacks, it will be tricky, it will be very threatening, but this is exactly what you need to grow and learn. So whenever you notice, oh, anxiety is going higher because I'm facing it, great. This is the moment when neuroplasticity kicks in, because you're training your brain, just like your muscles, and you're actually facing the fear. And then noticing, oh, I can do this. And then your mind calms a bit down. Maybe you become a little bit proud. You feel good about yourself. And then you feel calm about yourself. You widen your, basically your circle of where you're feeling comfortable, right? Your comfort zone is getting bigger. You're more calm. So exposure therapy, that's the biggest one. Expose yourself to the threat slowly, where you feel comfortable with. Then another one, what else you can do? So we're about awareness, we're about exposure therapy. A big one, a very big one, is simply relaxation. I want you to sleep enough. Are you sleeping enough? I want you to relax more. I want you to go on holidays for a weekend. Have you done this in a while? Actually, for a weekend, drive somewhere else where it's relaxed, get like a cabin in the woods, calm down, jump into your pool, go into the sauna, whatever it is. But I want you generally to change your lifestyle a bit, where you set aside deliberate time for relaxation and calming down your mind and your body. Because these days you're quite a lot in this threat alert state. Like, oh, it's dangerous. I'm generally having anxiety. I cannot sleep. I cannot do this. And I want you actually to train that. Not maybe training is the wrong word here, but simply setting aside time to allow your body and your mind to calm down. And when it comes down for sleep, maybe you say, oh, I cannot sleep well, then work on your sleep hygiene. Set an evening routine. Turn off the light already when you go to bed. Make sure that you don't expose yourself to the blue light before you go to bed. Read a book. Only lie in your bed when you sleep. And don't do work there. Especially, it would be even better if the room that you're in, that you're sleeping, is only for sleep. Get a regular sleep cycle, regular sleep pattern, where you go to sleep and wake up in the morning at the same time roughly. A lot of things you can do about that. Okay, here's another little tip. Change your context. So if you're in a certain room and you become anxious, and you have the power to leave that context and change, that works. Maybe you're in your office and you notice, oh, I'm getting stressed, there's something going on. Go into another room. You kind of like trick your brain, because your brain thinks, oh, there's threat here. And then you go into a different room and your mind more gets the feeling like, oh, okay, I kind of escaped it. I can relax now. So changing that context, going out for a walk, going somewhere else, changing that room up, that often helps. It also gives you the feeling that you can actually do something about this, because if you notice, hey, I can start dealing with my anxiety, this is a low-hanging fruit, just going into a different room. You start noticing, oh, it's getting better, and you start to learn, oh, I actually can do something about this. Because right now you might have even this learned helplessness, where you're noticing, I learned over the past that I am helpless. I'm exposed to this anxiety. I don't know what to do. I'm totally helpless about it. And we, first of all, even before you can do this exposure therapy and become courageous and exposing yourself more to the threat, you need to have this feeling that, yes, I can do something about this. I can change something and I can handle that. It's very important. And by the way, you can. Anxiety is one of the most treatable things in psychology, really. I'm not saying that it's not a big deal, but you can do something about this. This is certain, for sure. Yeah. And the last point that I want to talk about is the way you communicate with yourself. Because I can imagine you're actually quite rude to yourself, because you're very annoyed by this anxiety, and you even talk to yourself in a rude way, like, oh, you're anxious again. Why are you anxious again? You shouldn't be anxious about this. You're a grown-up man. You talk with not a lot of respect with yourself. And here's the question. When you're fully in this panic and anxiety state, how old do you feel in this moment? Probably not the age that you are in. A lot of clients that I talk to feel like a kid. They feel like a 10-year-old, like a 7-year-old helpless kid, which you are in this moment, because emotionally, when it comes down to anxiety in those particular moments, you are at the level of a child. And you haven't developed further. So basically there's a child sitting, and you being rude to yourself and saying, come on, act like a grown-up man. Why are you still doing this again and again and again? The question is whether this is helping. I mean, imagine there's a child sitting on the bench and you just go up to it and say, you stupid ass. And you scream at it and be like, come on, do this now, do the math, do this, get up, pay rent and get your job done and whatever. Is this helping? Like 7-year-old child? Is this helping now or later? It's not. The child is just getting even more insecure and crying. And that's exactly why it doesn't work, your strategy these days, to just simply be rude to yourself and annoyed by yourself. Really annoyed by yourself. And the question is, what does the 7-year-old child, or how old it is, needs? Probably some encouragement, probably some patience, probably somebody that is holding his or her hand while he or she is slowly starting to walk and facing the threats step by step, but with a lot of compassion. And that's what you're lacking these days. I'm pretty sure about that. All right. If you need somebody else that is holding that hand of this child, maybe you're on the left side, I'm on the right side, and we're like walking together and facing that together, I suggest you book a call with me. There's a link below this video, and we can have a first free call where we simply talk and just understand how I can help you, whether I can help you. And also I want to work out a custom strategy with you, how we could overcome your feelings of anxiety Anxiety is a broad feeling, right? Maybe you have panic attacks, maybe not. Maybe there are specific things that you're afraid of. I don't know what it is, but I want to get to know you and I want to build a custom strategy together with you. And that's still for free, by the way. Free value one-on-one with me. And I want you to make use of this chance. There's a link below this video. And also share this video with anybody else where you feel like this might be helpful for them.